What's up everyone, it's your homeboy, and recently Paige called into one of my live shows to squash the beef. Now if you ask me what the beef was all about, I couldn't exactly tell you, but I do know that last year in July I did a live stream about not just her but also Dustin Dailey and Nick Snider, because the three of them had been going after my friend Ashlee Lillie. You know, they kind of were essentially just mad at her for not immediately condemning Creepshow art when everything was just first coming out. You know, it was really ridiculous. But the live show I never ended up posting on the channel, so I figured maybe I can post a part of it on here so we can get a little context of how we felt towards, of course, not just Paige. You know, if anything, I'm proud of Paige for calling into my show and showing growth and some accountability, as you guys will see in the phone call. Because in my book, Nick Snider and Dustin Dailey are still cowards. So I figured I'd put some of that live stream into this video and then also put the phone call with Paige just after so we could see the growth. Because we stand some growth, all right? I mean, it's not to say that Paige has changed from one day to the next, all right? I don't know, I personally think she's on the right track at the very least, especially when you compare the other two. Damn, that's a lot of shade. I'm throwing a lot of shade. All right, without further ado, let's go back to July of 2021 and I'll check in with you guys just after that clip. Or you could even skip around. You know I always chapter my videos. It's for your convenience. But if you skip around, you have to give the video a thumbs up. It's a rule. So to introduce this video live stream, basically I got word that people were ganging up on my girl Ashlee. And if you guys are familiar with the channel, I've become somewhat close to Ashlee Lillie. You know, she's been featured on my channel a few times, and it didn't look good. It didn't look good to me. So obviously I wanted to like talk about it, you know, and I wasn't on Twitter. I'm now back on Twitter. Because it's hard to keep up with this kind of thing because it happened on Twitter. So it's hard to keep up when you don't have a Twitter. So I'm like, ugh. I didn't download the app on my phone, so I'm still like using it very minimally. Yeah, it's like these three T channels were like kind of ganging up on Ashlee over the dumbest thing. So, you know, I wanted to go over it because it's so silly, and they like double, triple down. They didn't want to back off. And in my opinion, it's pretty dumb. But, you know, regardless of my bias here, obviously, like, you know, I am on this side, like as I'm presenting it right now. Regardless of my bias, I still want to give them the opportunity to clarify anything that I may be misunderstanding, because what the hell? So these T channels are Paige, Dustin Dailey, and Nick Snider. Now I believe Nick Snider, I could be wrong. I think Nick Snider maybe only said one or a few things. He probably said the least out of the three. But yeah, it was just really confusing because the origin of it all is just so dumb. And it's really like, if I tell you guys that don't know about it, you know, that you guys are blessed with being off of Twitter, you're gonna agree with me. I would think. Basically, Nicholas Diorio, he did this great promo. He did this great promo for his podcast, Half Baked Podcast. You know, you can look it up on YouTube, where he spilt some tea, which is always something that's clever to do a little promo, you know? I mean, I'm talking about it now, and I gotta say, that podcast, I actually listened to it, and it was pretty entertaining. But in this podcast, they leaked out, well, not they, Nicholas Diorio was like, oh, guys, I know something. I don't know if I should say. And everyone was like, okay. He was like, guys, don't make me say. And he was like, all right, we won't make you say. And he was like, all right, I'll say it. Apparently, Creepshow Art, Shannon, asked Gabbie Hanna to do a video specifically against Julia, Ready to Glare. Now, if you're familiar with the amount of videos that came out about Creepshow Art, right? That was a huge story, huge. Naturally, this is like a big bomb. And especially if you know the context that they were good friends. And it really just tells you what a shitty person Shannon actually was. She wants to get back at Julia because Julia uploaded a video like being hurt or something, you know what I mean? Like it's unbelievable, really. But anyways, that detail aside, people were reacting on Twitter, and among those people was Ashlee Lillie. And then later on, she tweeted saying something like, plot twist, Shannon actually showed me one of Gabbie's videos like way before as well. And then from there, Dustin Dailey took that and said the most just weird, like again, this is why I would have liked to have Dustin Dailey on. Like I tagged him on Twitter and I even followed him. I would have liked to know what his deal was, or how did he come to this conclusion. I'm gonna show you guys a screenshot right now, alright? So Ashlee said, plot twist, I've seen some of Gabbie's series before it came out because Creepshow was leaking to all of us, talking about how crazy it was, right? And then Dustin Dailey quote tweeted it, and he says, plot twist, you knew the fuckery that Gabbie was saying and doing before anyone. It'd be interesting to know what you've seen and if you knew Gabbie was gonna go after Ready to Glare so hard. Also, second plot twist, you're just as bad. How do you get that out of this? What the hell? Like all Ash was saying was that Gabbie Hanna sent some of her series to Creepshow Art for like approval, like how is this coming out, right? Whatever, how does it look so far? It's one thing to leave it at that first plot twist, right? Trying to like get a gotcha or like, I don't know, trying to trap her for whatever reason. But the second plot twist, you're just as bad. Just as bad as who, bitch? Okay? See, fuck. I didn't want to start saying words because I don't know this person. And I did want him to possibly come on if he wanted to. But what the fuck are you going after my friend like that?
I am not here to report factual anything. I'm here to report what I get on Twitter. Literally, that's it.
Third plot twist, I called it. Petty Paige, you called what? I have that tweet up on the screen right now from Dustin Dailey. Imagine if I, Nick Snider, Paige Christie, so he's already kind of like clicking himself with these people, I guess. I guess these are the channels, you know, or anyone else in the beauty community. I didn't know these people were in the beauty community. Did what's being alleged of Creepshow Art. You all would have all our heads. It's truly weird how y'all pick and choose what to be mad over. So he's basically saying like, why aren't you guys going after the people that Creepshow Art associated with? You know, like all that kind of stuff. Right now, he's looking real wrong. And you know, that's why I wanted him to come on the show if you want.
Where is he? Where are any of these people? What's up?
What's up, Augie?
I mean, to give him some point, some credit, I did tweet them yesterday, but let's face it, we all live in the internet. Come on, let's not.
We're all YouTubers. We're all here. I'm here right now. I'm here right now. Where is Paige? I want to talk to Paige, really.
Well, according to Paige, not only are you obsessed with her, but also Ashlee's obsessed with her. Everybody's just obsessed with her.
Everybody's obsessed with people when they lose and get owned. It's kind of curious how that works, you know? Edwin, what do you think I've done in the past 24 hours? Nothing. Petty Paige thinks that I just like sit in my room and like have like schizophrenic breakdowns about her and she's talking about me again. No, I just sit in my room. Dude, I'm waiting, all right? I'm fucking waiting. I want to hear her engage with the ideas, engage with the discourse, enter the battlefield of ideas.
I tweeted her, I tweeted all three of them, but the only person that kind of responded was Paige, and she blocked me, which is a little weird because I've spoken to her. We've been cordial. We've been fine.
Yeah, aren't you like chill? I didn't know there was even any.
I thought so. I didn't know she had such a problem. I don't understand. Originally, I would have wanted her to address the stuff about Ashlee, and I know you wanted to debate her. I didn't expect her to agree to that. But regardless, block me. And then I started thinking, what do you have to hide? So I go to her account, like, not signed into my account, obviously, because I'm blocked. And I start seeing all this dumb shit she tweets. I'm like, okay, you know what? It's for the best. I don't need to see this dumb shit ever.
While we're on the topic of things that she's tweeting and, like, being obsessed, whatever, I just want the record to show I have never in my life even visited any of their Twitter pages other than to block them. Like, whenever we had the exchanges with the quote tweets was because I got them through notifications of them quote tweeting my stuff. The whole thing that she said, that was like plot twist, I called it. The funny thing about that tweet specifically is the first interaction I ever had with Paige, aside from on your stream talking about Jeffree Star a year ago, where she was gassing me up in the chat when me and Shannon were talking, the first interaction I had with her on Twitter was whenever I posted my first like kind of statement about the Shannon thing, because, you know, we'd all kind of started figuring out that she was lying to us, and it was a really hard thing for me to post because it's like, you know, that was my friend, that's somebody I trusted. And I had said at some point that, you know, if she was telling the truth, then we would be there for her. And right. Paige quote tweeted me and said, oh, she was playing you guys the whole time and you're still on standby. That just sounds fishy to me. That, like, and that's whenever they started making it if this was us, you guys would eat us alive type of thing. I've only had to explain myself about Shannon to two people. And who the fuck were they? Paige and Dustin. I've never had any other issues. And these tweets, whenever I've made them, have gotten like thousands of likes, a bunch of people commenting on them, but I haven't had to explain to a single other person except for them.
Oh, guys, yeah, I gotta show you guys Ashlee's clapback.
Oh, well, that's why it was so much funnier whenever she said the plot twist, I called it, because I don't know if you remember, but a couple days after that, when we kept talking about the creep show stuff, somebody mentioned my name on one of her posts because obviously, you know, I'm like one of her friends and it was being talked about. And she was like, oh, who's Ashlee? Then somebody said one of the Dobby Vanity girls or something. And she goes, oh, the one that was saying that she would stick up for creep show. And then I replied to her.
I always saw that tweet too.
So after that, whenever I had responded to her, she was like, girl, chill. I just didn't remember your name. That's not what I meant. And it's like, no, she had said, like, she was acting like she never implied that. She was acting whenever I confronted her and I was like, you know, that's not what I said to you. And I think you know that. So then a month later when she goes, I called it. I'm like, you called what? Because according to you, you didn't even think anything.
When her defense is out, we can choose your stance, but to have nothing to currently go off on, then being on standby, I don't know. She's trying to like shame Ashlee for like not immediately like shitting on Creepshow art like everybody else, right? Like it should have been immediate. Like how dare Ashlee not immediately hop on the cancel train towards Creepshow art? Guys, you have to keep in mind too, this is before the Emily Artful video too. This is very early on. Like this is very early on to the Creepshow saga. Somebody was replying to Paige saying, Ashlee's so messy. Why does she pretend she doesn't want to be in drama when she constantly exit on? And Paige says, very this, throws stones, then hides, right? This is a person that blocked me when I said, hey, you want to have a conversation about this whole thing? She blocked me. And I've been cordial with her for the past, like, longer than a year from now, you know? And we've always been cordial. And instead of wanting to have a conversation, she just blocks. She hides, essentially, like, this is what we're dealing with, guys. Someone, and again, if you go to her feed, you'll see how she's been shitting on people constantly, like me for some reason. Instead
of just being like, oh, my bad on anything, they all have to be like, oh, well, actually, this is what you meant. It's like, no, that's not what I meant. They just cannot take an L. They have to double down. And I don't know about you guys, I can't fathom living my life that way. I already have other stuff going on. I don't want to fight with people online all day.
Vine?
Sorry, I'm just going.
You say Vine?
It's just so frustrating. Like, I can't.
Vine?
I just can't.
Oh, you said online. I thought you said on Vine. I was like, Vine.
No. Yeah, online. Sorry, not on Vine.
Sorry, not to interrupt, but like, Nick Snider
Edwin's
only
showing
said
his
this.
internet age there. Jeez.
Yeah, sorry about that. Nick Snider only said this one thing, right? The whole calm down, Gabbie.
Yeah, no, so that, which is really funny. I think ratios are funny in like a stupid way, but everything that I said to them.
That's obviously an outdated screenshot, but
the one with Paige was like, she had 20 something and I had like 100, I think. But anyways, you know, whatever. But yeah, he said that, and I saw that after I blocked Dustin. Because that was after me and him had been going kind of back and forth for a while. And then I saw that because somebody else had commented on it, so I got the notification. And I was like, what the hell, dude? Like, I don't understand what keeps happening with this. And that's what his whole point was with that tweet, is that I sounded like Gabbie because I was talking about like trauma or whatever.
Yeah, and I believe that tweet you were talking about is the same one that Dustin Dailey quote tweeted when he said, oh dear Lord, why are you acting like you're the main character out of all this? You lay with the dogs, you get fleas, and Creepshow is a dog. It's just comical. After you got called out, you added the rice gum bit. We should have clarified in the first place. Bitch, you fucking lie down with Jeffree Star, so what the fuck are you? A sewer rat? Like, you're below that.
Dude,
come on now, if that's your logic, right?
Not to mention, I found an article from April of this year, not last year after Jeffree went on to Chris Hansen, April of this year, where he was talking about how like when there was that whole situation where like there was a rumor that Kanye West like cheated on Kim Kardashian with Jeffree Star. Dustin Dailey is in an article like, oh yeah, I called Jeffree right away to see if it was true or not, and me and Jeffree talked and laughed about it. In April of this year.
Well, there you have it. I mean, Dustin Dailey, homeboy, what's up? Again, guys, I don't know anything about Dustin Dailey. This is me learning about him. I actually have had a conversation with Nick Snider, I think 2 years ago, but I don't know anything about him either besides that conversation from like 3 or 4 years ago. And Paige, you know, I thought it was interesting that you said that I don't know if they want to make me into a Gabbie Hanna because like, yeah, the way that like they circle jerk until they can make someone feel crazy, right? It's annoying.
Yeah, they do this a lot where they sort of like whatever the internet villain of the week is, whether that's deserved or undeserved, you know, obviously right now it's Gabbie Hanna, you know, they just like, you know, last year it was Onision. I would say, especially in Onision's case, that was 100% deserved, obviously. But, you know, they sort of make like whoever like their current like enemy on Twitter or YouTube is, they like equate it to like, oh, well, you're Onision, you're Gabbie Hanna, when it doesn't make any sense at all.
There's people
because their audience like listens to that. They're like, they hear like this person they follow. They hear like, you know, Nick Snider say, oh, Ashlee's just like, you know, Gabbie Hanna. So they think, oh, damn, okay. So that's like instantly in their head. That's where they put her. If that's their first impression of her, they're like, oh, well, this is another Gabbie Hanna type situation, right? Like that's what they go to. It's just like a cheap way, like when you really don't have an argument, to just honestly like poison the well, you know, before you like engage with you know, the other ideas. Except they don't really engage with any ideas. They just kind of do name calling on Twitter. Really, that's all their shit is. And it's ironic because like
they go along.
Yeah, you know, I do like fucking name calling too, but usually that's like after I've acknowledged that there's no productive conversation is gonna happen. You know what I mean? So like with Petty Paige, like I'd be more than happy to like really like break down why she says a bunch of false shit on the internet. I'd love to have that conversation. I feel like she just thinks I'm just going to join call and just like scream at her or something like that. No, I actually like I'm curious like why you're just so wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought she was like some respected YouTuber though. That's the thing. Like when she first shot on me, I was just like, isn't this person like something people like?
Petty Paige,
here's
like,
the thing.
Wasn't she like blowing us for like a week? She just came on. She's like, "Oh my God, Nick, I love your videos. I respect you so much as a creator." And then we like got into a fight with DefNoodles, and then she hated me.
Didn't that happen on my stream? I should look that up.
Yeah, there's like I could have sworn she was just like,
me.
"Nick, I respect you so much," or something like that, over and over again. Like she gave me like, you know, like a overwhelmingly nice fucking first impression.
I'm gonna look that up.
And then she like totally lost her shit.
Welcome again, Paige. Sorry for inviting you and then
Hi. No. Do you know what? I'm actually quite a big fan of Nicholas. I'm like obsessed with him. So it's actually quite nice to hear his voice. I was
wow. All right then. Okay.
I'm kind of
glad that
a little
worked.
bit.
Congratulations, you made it to the intermission. So if you need to go to the bathroom, we probably don't have enough time because we're gonna move right along. So as you may have noticed, I didn't have much beef with Paige. She took a few shots at me on Twitter, but went a lot harder on Ashlee and Augie. So they were really the ones that had the bigger beef. And I was willing to moderate or hopefully just try to talk things out because the source of both of these beefs seemed a bit ridiculous to me. Now it's been over half a year and she came to my live show to talk things out with me, and she's willing to talk things out with Augie and Ashlee too. But don't let me spoil too much. All right, now let's roll the clip. I'd actually be interested in talking and squashing the beef. I wanted to see Angie. Oh my God, I read someone autocorrect Augie in the chat, so I called Augie Angie. I wanted to see the Augie confrontation first, and that never ended up happening. I feel like he should be before me, but we can talk sometime. Or if you wanted tonight, maybe we could do it. Augie never rescheduled. Oh shit, Angie RFC, bro, you're getting called out.
Where are you? I'm here. I'm in the arena. I'm ready.
You guys think we should pause this and have a last minute confrontation? This wasn't on the regular scheduled program, but fuck it. Nobody ever confronts me. Let me introduce this real quick. Paige in chat, you're okay with me re-uploading this, right? I mean, I figured we should publicly squash the beef because obviously I did that one live stream where I focused on how you went off on Ashlee, which, you know, she's a close friend of mine. Also, you went off on me and quite a few posts on your Twitter. So, like, you know, I originally found it curious when you like unblocked Nicholas Diori of all people because I would say he's typically the more toxic one, and I'm curious that you came into my chat. So she says she wants to squash the beef. I'm totally ready, guys. 1 minute, she says. All right, I like both Paige and Edwin. You know, I never had issues with Paige. I mean, I think she went down a spiral eventually, but like I remember seeing some of her content, and I was like, this stands out from the other T stuff, and then she went off the rails on your boy and others. Can't we all be friends? Look, guys, I'm the type of guy, you guys know, all right, that I'll talk to anybody.
Okay, I've got it working. Hi.
Hey, how's it going? Long time no speak.
Yeah, same.
How you doing? How early is it over there?
Very, very early. I woke up very early for the kids, and now I'm awake, so it's a thing. And I saw that you were streaming a few hours back. And then I came back and you were still streaming. And then I had a message from somebody saying that like you wanted to see my video on Twitch. And then I was just kind of like, no, fuck that guy immediately. And then obviously I just thought to myself, no, Paige, we said new year, new you. We're going to try and be better. and squash beefs and move forward. So that's kind of what I want to do instead of holding on to anger, because that's a huge problem of mine, is that I can hold a big grudge.
You originally had anger as your initial reaction?
Oh yeah, I hold grudges. I hold grudges.
Okay, because I am curious about this grudge. I'm curious about, what is the grudge?
Not necessarily a grudge necessarily with you, but just, I don't know, maybe I'm like one of many people I kind of feel who feels like you as a content creator have changed, and that's fine. I feel like everybody changes, evolves and grows and stuff, but just, the person I remember, from back in the day is not the person that I see today. And I think that sometimes when you're confronted with somebody, evolving, I think that it can, I feel like a lot of the things that you stood for before is not the same stuff you stand for now. And I'm having to just adjust to that, not just as, a commentator, but as a viewer as well, because I was a fan. Okay.
Well, I'm curious as to those elaborations, because some people have said similar things in the past, and I'm always curious to talk it out. If anything, I would agree that some of my kind of like the way I view life has changed, and you as well said you want to see this new year in a similar light. And I thought I kind of saw you in a certain way. I think I said it right before you came on the call that I'm like, wait, what is this new spiral? So I guess we kind of saw each other in a similar way, that we kind of shifted the way we saw each other.
Which I think is natural as well, because I don't think I'm the same person. I think, honestly, I'm going to be making a video about it in the next couple of days, actually, just like a sit down video. But there's a lot of stuff that I've said in the past and the things that I've done in the past I don't stand by today. And I feel like it's natural for us to evolve and change and stuff like that. I feel like I took personal offense to a lot of things that not directly or personally affect me. And I definitely fed into the ridiculous woke culture of Twitter. So I'm fully aware of where my faults lie. And I'm, willing to kind of grow and move past it, I guess.
I think that's a really good way to address some of like what I had issues with, I don't know, is there anything specific that I have changed? Because this is curious for me just as a creator as well.
Well, I just wanted to point out from the jump, when I blocked you, I didn't realize that, first of all, you'd left Twitter, and I hadn't realized that you'd created a new Twitter and that account that was messaging me was you. I thought it was a troll. So then I blocked it.
Okay.
So because I remember when you made the stream revolving me and stuff, there was like personal offense taken to that. I genuinely didn't know that was you, because I remember your account having far more followers than that.
Yeah.
So when I saw the account, and at the time that the account showed up, it didn't have a profile picture at all. I was like, who is this egg account? So I just blocked it.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Is there anything you want to discuss? Because I want to...
You said that changed as a creator, so that's what I'm curious about. Like, what did I used to stand for that I no longer, or at least you perceive that I no longer stand for?
Well, I kind of feel like you always came from a perspective of like being somewhat like biased and, like an even person. And then it seemed as if like when you entered into a new friendship group, or what I perceived as a new friendship group, that your persona somewhat changed, and that you were kind of veering into like the edgelord side of things. And I don't know whether that was something that I was okay with, because I was like, well, where's the Edwin that I remember from, the Dasher situation and all that kind of, like, where's that dude? I like that dude. And I feel like, it's just one of those things. I've changed as a content creator. There's people who don't like the new me too, so.
That's fair. People have said that specifically, and I would kind of attribute that as to like, because, many years ago, I really didn't have too many people that I associated with on YouTube. Like, I didn't really have YouTube friends, because I from that past drama of mine, I had very big issues trusting people for a while. So when I came across like Augie and Nick's channel, I reached out to him because I was covering the Shiloh drama, and she had gone off on him as well. That's when I first met him, and then Augie invited me to his show for an interview, and I got that vibe, and I kind of like that they don't have a filter. They kind of just say things how they're feeling, whatever. And yeah, sometimes they pick a lot of fights.
So like, this is like And this is like no cap. I have to say that I have developed this, even if I don't agree with everything, because I have to make that fucking fundamentally clear. But even if I don't agree with everything, I have to admit that the freedom in content creating when you stop giving a fuck about what the audience wants from you is so fucking liberating. And if I'd have never encountered Augie, I know I'm giving him credit, what the fuck, Augie, Nicholas Diorio, and that side of YouTube, I would never have changed my own personal perspective and style of creating content, because I found my passion for YouTube again, which was something that, you know, being a quote-unquote T channel, I'd lost, because it was all about pumping out as much content as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel in a certain similar kind of way, because I think it kind of allowed me to, I guess, show more of me, I suppose, and people maybe aren't used to that. See, I feel like when people say that I changed because of them, I feel like they're attributing their beliefs onto me, whereas like I say some outlandish shit and some dumb shit, but like I don't really agree with Augie's views or Nick's views on everything. Like I confront them publicly on their streams or Twitter, whatever. I've done it plenty of times, but people kind of make the connection. They say, okay, you believe this because of this, and oh, you know, you had Keemstar on your stream. Like even that one time when you were on my stream and I later had Keemstar, people were upset at that. Oh, you gave him platform. And I just kind of like wanted to be more open to listen to everybody, and like I was open to listen to them and everything, you know, because you know, as you thought of Augie a certain way, now you're seeing, okay, maybe it's the filter off. And I did struggle because it's like people really kind of applied that onto me. And when the whole Unisa documentary came out and everything, I got a lot of heat last year. And then that's when like I took a break off Twitter to the point where they deleted it, because when you get off Twitter for 30 days, I forgot about it. So I was like, okay, cool without it, you know. But like when I came back, I made it a point, like, because Twitter was so toxic, like even before like people were shitting on me for the documentary or whatever, I already had this mindset that like everything people say on Twitter is just always so like they're just looking for harming you. I came back to Twitter telling myself like I'm not gonna like give a shit. Like most of my tweets are like calling out bullshit or just laughing or whatever, blah, blah, blah. You know, like I don't want to take things too seriously.
No, I 100% understand you, but I just think sometimes as viewers we create like a parasocial relationship with the individuals it is that we watch on a frequent, and I used to frequent your videos. And I think in my head it was like, you know, very much like I'm old Kanye kind of situation, like what happened to Edwin's generation? But at the same time, I feel like now I've kind of gained a perspective that I don't necessarily have to agree with everyone on everything, and even a broken clock can get it right 2 times a day, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with somebody having a positive take yet not being okay with that person as well. So yeah, I'm just gonna like, for me, I'm just gonna start fucking allowing the viewer or the general consensus to rule how I act and how I feel about certain situations, or like stop me from speaking on something because I feel, you know, I have to go with the flow of what everybody else thinks. Yeah, new perspectives.
I mean, that's something I actually, you know, liked about your content as well. Like even before, you know, we had our falling out, I guess you could say, you did upload content that not everybody agreed with, and I was like, that's good, you know, like, because you're not always gonna have the popular take, whatever side you're on, whether people subscribe to you for or not, you know. There's gonna be a time when you screw up in their eyes and people are gonna judge you or whatever, but it's like you gotta stay true to yourself. And fundamentally, I think I've always been true to myself. You know, no matter how hard people want to reach that because I hung around with X person or said a joke here, and that means I don't care for, you know, victims or whatever people want to try to attach. Like I've never changed. I've always been me, and we all evolve, and I think that's good. I'm glad that you're open to talking, because like I think that's something people should be open to, like giving people benefit of the doubt, the communication. Because if you don't do that, then you're kind of just assuming the worst. And that's kind of how I feel it was when you're kind of ranting on me and Ashlee and other people, because like you just kind of went off and off and off, and it's like, okay, so it obviously makes me and everybody else assume the worst. And look at this now.
Yeah, with Ashlee, it was a completely different situation. I just kind of felt like she said one thing and then backtracked. And then I was just like, whoa, you went one side and then you completely switched. Why? And I think she took it extremely personal. And then when I didn't remember our interaction, she also got upset with that. And I was like, why there's a lot of people called Ashlee. Like, she was not at the forefront of my mind at all. And then was like, it was a weird situation. I think her emotions were extremely high.
Yeah.
And my emotions were just high in general, because I'm just high energy anyway. And it was a clash that didn't necessarily need to happen.
Exactly.
Because I was trying to be objective, but by being objective, it turned into like this battle that didn't need to happen. So, yeah, 100%. I'd be open to talking to her too.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how it went, because you know, your responses felt hostile in her direction, and you know, it was very high emotional, because you were saying like, oh, if this happened to us with the whole Creepshow shit, and it's like, dude, like it was super high emotional for us too with the whole stuff.
I have to admit though, I have to come from a different perspective of being in the tea community for as long as I've been in the tea community. There are certain standards that are placed upon us, and it was very strange for me to look as an outsider and see that the same standards weren't being placed on other people. And then I felt like, oh, this is an injustice, this is unfair. When in reality, it's just a different cultured environment. And then I've realized now as a content creator that I now have to culture and foster a new environment, that I've got to be okay with losing a couple thousand, a couple 100,000, I don't really care, subscribers to change the culture of my channel. Because I've created a culture in my channel where if we don't all have the same opinion, then, you know, we're terrible humans, when that's not the case. We're all individuals with highs and lows. Sometimes we're moody, sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're this.
Yeah, someone in chat already said, I'm going, I hate seeing Edwin kiss ass. See, so no matter what, like, something like that happens everywhere is gonna rub someone the wrong way. But like, I'm glad that Paige is willing to talk about it, because I was annoyed. I was mad that she was like tweeting like stuff like, look at this screenshot from an Edwin skit from 20 years ago where he pulled his eyes, and I was like, what are you doing, Paige? I was thinking like, this is so like,
but do you know what's the worst thing? The worst thing about that, and this is something that I genuinely do regret, is that like, nobody is fucking above reproach. We've all done some fucking shitty shit. I've done some shitty shit.
Exactly.
So then for me to sit there and pose the pointing finger at somebody else, I've got a bunch of fingers pointing back at myself too. You know what I mean? So it's about how we learn and grow from those situations, and not about the situations that actually took place. It's, are you that same person now? And I think with yourself, I can confidently say that you're not.
I can confidently say I'm not the same person I was last year or the year before. Like things happen, like life events will happen and change you guys. Like I could list it, but I don't want to go down that dark route, guys. But like shit fucking happens in my life. Shit happens in everybody's life. But as long as like you fundamentally stay true to yourself. Anyways, let's not get too cheesy. Chat, is there anything else that you feel needs to be addressed? Ashlee in chat says, you guys relentlessly targeted me for saying I wasn't sure what to make of Shannon when it was starting. You went on for hours and kept kicking me when I was down. That's definitely how it felt. Like I saw it that way. That's why I was pretty mad as well. So I don't know if you want to respond to that from Ashlee.
Sorry, did you ask me a question?
Yeah, Ashlee in chat says, you guys relentlessly targeted me for saying I wasn't sure what to make of Shannon when it was starting. You went on for hours and kept kicking me when I was down.
Oh, one sec, let me see. Starting, you went for hours, kicking me while I was down. Do you know what? I just think, like I said previously, I was coming from the perspective that there was a level of leniency provided to you that wasn't provided to myself. And then I kind of felt like, you know, this is some bullshit. Because when a similar situation happened within the beauty community, because Xylie's also said that like beauty drama community is a completely different space altogether. And when a similar situation happened with, you know, a friend of mine, Rich Lux, doing a bunch of adherent bullshit shit that he did, it wasn't enough for us to turn around and say that we disavow. Whereas it was enough for you guys to say that you disavowed and everyone to move on from that situation. And I feel like maybe I kind of came from a place of just, you know, being a bit like, well, this sucks. Why do you get that leniency?
Listen to that point though, because you're saying it wasn't enough in those situations that you were involved in. It was enough for who? For the viewers that targeted you.
Yes.
But now you're becoming the viewer targeting her. So that's why I think it is wrong. You know. So like, you became that.
Oh, 100%.
Which you didn't like.
Oh, 100%. It was me trying to uphold the standards that I'd seen for so long. I was continuously trying to uphold those same standards, and the standards are ridiculous. It's too hard to keep up with.
I don't look. Chat is saying apologize, but it shouldn't be a pressured or forced one. I'm just. Do you think you're? Do you think you want to apologize? I don't know. That sounds fucking weird to say aloud.
I think when it comes to apologies and stuff like that, as much as I will sit down and acknowledge that people want me to apologize for the situation, I don't believe that apologies should be forced. I feel like when you say an apology because somebody told you to apologize, it kind of removes the actual care of the apology. So what I will say is that I apologize for not understanding her point of view. And understanding that from a first person situation being directly involved in the drama, that I didn't give her any leniency to learn and understand her own emotions. That much I can apologize for. In terms of any other apologies, I think it would have to be in private.
It would have to be in what?
In private.
Wait, what was that word?
Private, sorry.
Private. Sorry, I'm sorry. I should know British accents. I'm sorry, private. Yeah. Okay, I hear that. Yeah, you saying like it's the way you present yourself online was not something you stand for anymore.
No, we're growing. We're growing in 2022.
All right. I mean, guys, this is a step forward. All right, this is good. I appreciate it. I think it's good. I think they can talk in private if they need to, but also look, if like. Tastes are left bad, then that is, I get it on Ashlee's behalf as well. Off topic, will you speak to Augie? Well, she said that it's on Augie's.
Okay, so with the Augie situation, we agreed that we would have a conversation off camera, well, on camera, but like without an audience because we felt like the situation was a little too hot at the time. Maybe not so much now, but at the time it was definitely very hot. He was going away. I think to the meetup with the other commentators and stuff. So he said, we'll do it afterwards. And I said, listen, I'm free as a bird. You let me know and we'll do it. He never messaged me back since October. So I'm not going to, personally, I'm not going to go and chase him for it if he doesn't want it anymore.
Yeah, but you don't think he's like a white supremacist racist?
I don't necessarily think he's a white supremacist racist. I definitely take back the shooter comment for sure. But I don't think he's a white supremacist racist. I think that he teeters on that edge lord situation. I don't agree with that. That's just me. But at the same time, I can appreciate that he has some good takes outside the parameters of race. I just don't think that a race discussion is going to be beneficial to us because he's on the opposite end of the spectrum. He's the one who's like calling himself a proud Asian when it's notably true that he isn't. Yeah. So I don't know whether a discussion about race and the implications of race and how things can be different for different content creators and stuff like that. I don't think that that's going to be a positive discussion for us to have. But I'm willing and open to have that discussion.
I see him having his bio hashtag Stop Asian Hate, like say every now and then that he's a proud Asian stuff, and I personally don't see a harm in that. I think it's like obviously being playful, and some people might find harm, but I don't. I feel like there's bigger things to focus on as opposed, like getting mad over that. And yeah, I feel like the stuff with Augie, you just had so much like this. You were literally disturbed. You had said, and it was like so interesting to watch. But I'm glad that you're shifting away. I won't ask too much about Augie because, hey, if that happens between you and him, that would be another better confrontation.
Yeah, I'm still down and I'm still open.
Where is Paige? I want to talk to Paige. Really.
The last thing I'll ask is, do you concede that DefNoodles is a little bit of, I don't want to say unhinged, but a little bit like off his rocker?
I don't watch DefNoodles that much anymore. And I don't know whether it's because I'm just not engaged with his content or whether I'm just beginning to find it a little bit samey. Like just in the structure of his content, I guess. It seems to be the same format a lot.
As far as I can remember, I feel like it started from, people picking on DefNoodles for his lack of originality, and then you took offense for him in a way, and you kind of stood up for him in a sense. So that's why
it wasn't necessarily his lack of originality that I was trying to defend. I just, in my head, I just kind of had, especially when that whole situation of, you know, he isn't really a Latina man who was brought over here, blah, blah, blah. He had a very positive upbringing with like a private school, etc., etc. Just like, you know, we can't really sit there and disseminate somebody's upbringing when we don't know. A lot of people make the assumption of my personal upbringing because I'm a black woman from the UK. And, you know, I've grown up in predominantly white areas. I didn't have my first black friend until I was in university. Like, that's how very much whitewashed my whole world was at one point. I think part of my personal self-discovery as a black woman has been, you know, taking part in loads of social justice things and movements surrounding my race and being involved as much as I possibly can. But that was about my own personal self-discovery as a black woman, because unfortunately growing up, I didn't have that self-discovery. I didn't have any reflection of positive black people until I was in university. I didn't get to see that besides like direct family. So because of that, I think that a lot of people have assumptions on my personal upbringing, and I just don't think it was necessarily a fair discussion to have personally. But at the same time, do I think that DefNoodles has got things wrong with his reporting? Yes, but doesn't everybody? It's about how you handle it, and as long as he's able to correct himself, I don't see any issue with it. Personally speaking, I'm not going to continue, shall I say, swinging the bat for DefNoodles, because it's quite clear to me that if I was in a similar situation, he wouldn't swing a fucking bat for me. So what the fuck am I doing?
Exactly. Let's face it. Well, I mean, just the background for that situation is he had been like screwing up and not really correcting much of anything, and it came to a point where instead of like correcting, he just started lashing out at you know, Nick and Augie and everybody, and he kind of brought up the race thing first. He kind of victimized himself, being like, they're attacking me because I'm Brazilian, and it was like, we didn't even know you're Brazilian, you know, and they kind of found out his thing. But anyways, that's kind of why I was just curious about it. But I think we had a good conversation here.
Yeah, I do want to make out for the record that I'm not friends with DefNoodles. I probably haven't spoken to him in like over, like 9 months or something. I'm not his friend. I think a lot of people thought I was his friend and like we were kiki and stuff. I'm not his friend. I don't know him like that. I know him in a, hey, good video.
Well, and that's the thing too,
way.
okay? Because when that stuff was going down, you know, I'm always been like, even though like, you know, I'm cool with Nick and Augie and stuff, like, and they were obviously shitting on him. Like, I never shit on him publicly at all or anything like that. In fact, I actually went to his DMs and like, hey man, listen, I don't agree with this stuff because we follow each other, and like, but you know, if you want, like, try to understand. And like, he ended up blocking me, so like, he didn't really want to hear anything out. And that's the thing, like, I don't know if he ended up associating me directly with him or anything, but like, I was just trying to like speak with him as to why, you know, people see certain things a certain way, you know.
Yeah, I don't know whether he's going to be open or receptive to that. I think as long as he continues to grow and he gets positive reaffirmation from the community in his growth, in his numbers, in his money, that he's not really going to be self-reflective. I think sometimes you have to lose a little something in order to really reflect on yourself. For instance, myself, I had to lose a lot to work out that actually this is not what I want anymore. So,
yeah. Someone chat says she just Mariah Carey'd I don't know him. That's for the best. I think that's a good look.
I don't know him now.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for coming on. I'm glad you know, you can now unblock my new Twitter. Hey, maybe I'll follow you back. Maybe we can have peace, guys.
Oh my God, are we friends? Is that happening?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if my audience approves of it. You know, I gotta make sure they approve of everything, because shit.
Apparently, that's the world we live in. All right. Okay. Have a good stream.
Hey, thank you so much.
Okay, and you. Bye.
All right, let's have another intermission because I want to make note of some of the things discussed in the conversation with Paige. First of all, I really commend Paige for acknowledging that she would take offense for things that don't personally affect her. The way she worded that is concise, yet perfectly captures how easy it is to get lost in the outrage culture that breeds within Twitter. And that was the main root of the issues that she had against me and others. As for her viewing the past me as a more even and unbiased person than I am now, well, I disagree with that, but obviously I'm biased there. I feel it's important to discern that some bad takes don't define a person. person, and this goes for everyone. I like how Paige acknowledges this and even says how she wasn't sure she was okay with how she perceived me. The reason why I like how she said that she wasn't sure that she liked the Edwin that she was seeing is because I feel like that perfectly also captures how, you know, viewers get put off by something and they hold on to that something. Even though it turns them off, they hold on to that and sort of use it as a perpetual judgment on the creator. And in the viewer's mind, the judgment is justified because what they're seeing now is different from what they subscribed for or what they liked about the creator. So suddenly the creator doesn't feel right. But of course, it's all perception. And hey, this happens to most people. Someone's watching this right now and doesn't even realize that this is how they feel about someone that they used to like. Or maybe you don't even remember why you don't like that one creator anymore. Maybe it was just because the mob said so. Are we getting too deep? Sorry guys. I honestly really like the conversation and this topic in general because I feel like people just don't seem to talk about the in-between anymore as much, you know? It's all just black or white. What about the brown? Let's go Browndon. Now as for that whole segment on apologizing to Ashlee, well, that was awkward, wasn't it? I think it was kind of awkward too because the chat was pressuring an apology. Look, I feel like she almost actually had a pretty decent apology, you know, but I don't think she quite realized how she affected Ashlee in creating a whole scene and ganging up on her out of literally nothing, as we saw in the beginning of this video, you know, like it was over nothing. Regardless whether Paige apologizes or not, I do agree that if they have a conversation, it should be private. And especially because, you know, my girl Ashlee has been going through a lot and I don't really want this to be a scene any bigger than it already had been in the past. If any of you guys follow her, you may have noticed she's not been active and my girl's been going through a lot, so we just have to keep her safe, all right? Let's see what else I said in this live stream. Julie says, it's an interesting combo. As someone just starting out on YouTube, this is helpful and it's good advising, thank you. Fundamentally, like, I am still the same me, I guarantee you, you know. If anything, I guess you could say I've gotten a little bit off more filter, and especially like last year, you know, like I can't waste my time caring about what random people think. I guess I'm saying I understand that people obviously subscribe and they expect the same sort of thing, but to say that I'm a different person in live streams than I am in video, I mean, you know, there's no editing, so yes, you're gonna see something different, but you can't expect everybody to be the same on a cut up video. It's like when you get up in front of the class and perform versus like a casual conversation with your mom, you know. And also to kind of want to cancel me or hate on me because I associate with someone that you hate. It's like, dude, I'm pretty sure you have a family member that has some like non-vax or maybe you're non-vaxxer and they're pro-vaxxing. Like, do you like completely cut them off? You know what I mean? Like, or other kind of takes. Like, we have to be open to people that we disagree on. Because people aren't all bad. Everybody will have a take that you don't like. Doesn't mean you have to cut them off. But yeah, that's kind of what I want to say because I know there are probably people in the chat. There are probably people in here. I don't have a subscribers only. I'm sure there are people here that I haven't seen anybody shit on me in the chat, but every now and then I'll get people that troll me or come into my streams to clip me or just be bad faith or whatever. But I don't know. At that point, it's just kind of like you want to see the worst. Also loving this kind of olive branching right now. I feel honored. I want to contribute to this meta. Hell yeah, thank you. I mean, in my video where the recent one where I covered Poppy and Titanic drama, I said, yo, Poppy, I get it if you're mad at me. If you want to shit on me, like, I'll talk to Poppy. I get it. Like, something about me doesn't really trust Poppy, but I'll still hear her out. Just like something about me didn't trust Titanic, but I heard him out. You know, I'll hear everybody out. I would have heard Shannon out. I literally was gonna hear Onision. Actually, I heard him out on a phone call and we were supposed to do an interview. And, you know, people got mad at me for that. People will get mad for hearing people out, but even the worst types of people need to be heard. You know why? Because if they're genuinely bad, then you will know just how terrible they are when you hear them speak and when you get the good questions in. And that's what I try to get. I try to get every side of the perspective. Because if we have a limited kind of mindset, then it is what it is. We have a limited mindset and we need to open ourselves up. I think this has been a really good stream, guys. I mean, I don't even expect a last minute confrontation, but I think it all fit in pretty good. Overall, I think it was a good talk, and I'm open to hosting the conversation between her and Augie if they are down, and I could even play the prequel where Augie discussed the beef back in July of last year as I did in the beginning of this video. I don't know, just an idea. Now for those of you who want to keep watching because you like long videos and you really appreciate the live streams, take a look at how a completely random person took offense to my username. I think this has been a really good stream, guys. I mean, I don't even expect a last minute confrontation, but I think it all fit in pretty good. Coco, thank you for membership. She says, Edwin, when are you gonna change your name from Homeboy? Don't you know it's racist? Oh my god, you guys. Oh shit. You know what? We're still live. Might as well go through this, guys. You guys wanna see something interesting? So I tweeted out Might have to retire the homeboy in my streaming channel. Apparently it's an offensive slur now. Saf commented on my channel saying, just got recommended your video, and why do you as a non-black person have the word homeboy in your YouTube name? And I said, why not? And she said, it's a terrible look to appropriate language for your channel. Actually, let me go to the full conversation, guys, because I kept it going. That is the first time anyone's ever told me that, by the way. So like, I was like, what? I've had homeboys got receipts for like 3 years now, and I'm right, what? And I said to her, Saf, you're the first person to ever tell me my name is inappropriate and offer no explanation as to why. If I am missing something, this is not how a person is gonna learn. Anyways, if the name deters you away from the content, then that's okay. Thank you for clicking through and watching any of the video. New year, okay? Tipster in chat is also taking a similar route to Petty Page, where he wants to just like, you know, mend old burnt bridges and just be positive, kind of like chill out first, right? And I'm the same way. I want to reply to people and like give them the most benefit of the doubt, even when I can tell that they think I'm the worst person off the bat, right? Like, that's a pretty nice response, right? I'm literally saying, hey, you're not offering me any knowledge as to, like, obviously I'm not intentionally calling myself homeboy to insult people, right? So I'm like, can you tell me how it is? And so she says, I just told you, but let me elaborate. The word is part of black culture and is often used by non-black people to mock African American vernacular English. By the way, complete news to me. That's what makes it inappropriate and somewhat jarring to see a non-black person with an Ave username. So they said my username is jarring to see. I said, all you said was that it was inappropriate and have been condescending throughout the whole thread. Again, this is the first time I've been told by anyone. I cringe at myself a little bit for typing so much, because then I feel like I'm taking it seriously when I'm like, this is me being nice, right? But I'm like, me being nice doesn't have to type so much, damn it. So I said, again, this is the first time I've been told by anyone that it is wrong for me to call myself a homeboy. I've never heard of it being used to mock African American vernacular English either, nor have I even used it in such a way or learned it in this way. Like, I've never called someone homeboy in a condescending way, nor did I ever learn or hear that it was used that way, you know? That's the thing that I don't like, you know, that people that are literally cancel culture, like I hate to say it, but this is cancel culture. When you don't give people the benefit of the doubt that, hey, maybe they're missing something. Maybe they don't have the worst intention that you want to apply onto them. I said, I feel you're condescending me, but perhaps to take out frustrations from other situations or assuming wrong things on me. It's like, you know, maybe like you don't have the intent of being condescending towards me is what I'm trying to say. Maybe this is not your intent, but it is coming off this way. I went onto Google and found plenty I found nothing to point. Oh, that's an ugly sentence. Bad Edwin. And found nothing to point out that it was to mock African American vernacular English. So like basically I'm saying that I Googled, like I went out, I gave this girl the benefit of the doubt, something she didn't give to me, and I Googled, I'm like, I couldn't find anything that it was used to mock like people that use vernacular Ave, right? I found many results, however, saying that it was often used by African American people as well as Latinos, especially in LA, which is how I learned it. I've seen it used this way in media too, like in movies. You see it used in movies and like just media in general. People say homeboy all the time. They're not saying to condescend people, let alone African Americans. But you see, I think, and you know, this is obviously my own biased belief, but I feel like I've heard more Latinos say homeboy than I have heard black people. Not saying anybody owns the word either, by the way.
There she is, man. There's a bitch. Shit, man. Son of a bitch, she cheating, man. Hey, bitch. No homeboy for her tonight, man.
Culture is not universally linear, and if you learned it to be offensive, then I'm sorry that my name offended you, but no need to go out of your way to apply intent onto my name because you find my name offensive. Leave that kind of thing to the white people, please. I almost wanted to say Karens, but I didn't want her to think that I was calling her a Karen, which she kind of is a Karen. And then she says, cool, so a black person outright telling you that it's a microaggression and disrespectful to the black community, and this is the response you give. Gotcha. Like, bruh, this just tells me when someone replies like this, they already wanted to see the worst in you. And I said, yeah, okay, I have to assume you just enjoy being offended with your responses and saying my name is jarring because I'm not black. She said, keep up with the defensiveness. It really shows your status as an ally. And I said, over the word homeboy. Because when people talk like this, they just want to cancel you with little buzzwords. Okay, let's use complete sentences. My status over the word homeboy. My Mexican status is ruined. Oh no. And she says, oh, you're still mad about this a day later? Someone called out your racism. So now it keeps snowballing. Now I'm racist over my username. Maybe self-reflect instead of throwing a tantrum. And then I said, you're commenting on my video and coming back. Like, girl, this is my house. You're coming to my house and saying that I come back? No, this is my video, girl. You can do a filter, guys, where it says, I have responded. And sometimes I check back on people that I respond to because, you know, I want to see what they have to say with things I respond. And I scroll through and I was like, oh my God, this girl's still at it. And she says, I'm still at it? Yes, I'm here a day later laughing about it. It is my channel/video. Why are you here? To fight internet justice over being butthurt over a homeboy? Pat yourself on the back. And then Tipster says, you know the term homeboy started in Mexican-American communities in East LA, right? Oh, and he's a Mexican-American from East LA, so he would know. Oh my God, look. And then someone says, I'm all about blah, blah. And then she says, race card? Out yourself as a racist. Oh, girl, shut up. Okay, anyway, that's it. So I just got an update on this thread, and she couldn't say anything. This is people, like, guys, please don't be this, okay? Please don't be this. Just don't be this person. Catch yourself. When you find yourself kind of just like tunnel vision, being so hard and like wanting to cancel with no logic, because this lacks logic. Catch yourself. That's the kind of message I want to push on this channel, guys. Been a fan of you for years, and I'm so sad I found myself agreeing with people saying that you've changed and love your content, and I'm glad I tuned in today. Look, to be fair, for example, the person that had made the video about the dark side of Edwin, right? They said that I'm a different person on live, and it's like, if you want to see the bad dark side of me, then I guess that's just your opinion. But like, you just have to acknowledge that you want to see the bad in me. Don't feel bad. I forgive you. I forgive everybody. I'm always down to talk it out. That was actually a perfect example of someone taking personal offense to things that don't affect them. However, in this instance, this person has never even seen my channel. They just came across my video on Shannon and couldn't help but click to leave that comment expressing how jarring my username was. It was a literal choice to get offended. Lastly, let me play you this clip with the boys, Nick and Boblax, in which I ask Nick if Gabbie had a problem with Nick revealing that Shannon called her to go after Julia.
Dude, so here's the thing with that. Like, I want to kind of comment on that. We went back and forth on putting that up for like 2.5 minutes. Vega thought it was intentional and cut all of the parts where I was arguing on why I shouldn't say it. And then he just put it in. Because in my stream, I was like, bro, nobody even tried to convince you. You just kind of blurted it out. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, I don't really want to post it. Actually, I'm going to post it. Yeah, that's not a natural transition. There was like another 2 minutes of arguing in between there or something. And Vega's like, yeah, dude, I got rid of that, dude. It was getting a little redundant. I'm like, That's funny. So yeah, obviously, all I'm going to say is, yeah, I got a text because Tipster added her on Twitter. And said, hey, Gabbie, crazy leak from Nick DiOrio. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you tattletaling on me. But
wait a minute, yeah. What? Wait, whoa. Hold on, I'm so lost. What? Wait.
So when I leaked the Gabbie thing, Tipster fucking ats me, ats the podcast, and ats Gabbie Hanna in all caps, going, Nick leaked what? Dude, we did a whole episode. Nobody talked about Mudahar. Nobody talked about the fucking anything that we talked about with like the scams. Which, by the way, scams was the big topic that day. We were talking about like Ethan Klein and like the whole debate that he had with XQC. They fucking go to 5 seconds towards the end of the podcast, and then Ashlee's tweet gets 2,000 likes. It immediately gets to Gabbie. People are arguing. There's a whole drama. This stream's happening. I just thought people wouldn't care. I just didn't think anyone gave a shit about Creepshow anymore. I had no idea this fucking drama was gonna happen.
Your leak is the source of all this.
Wait, and then Ashlee drops another bomb that apparently fucking Creepshow is going around showing people the episodes of Gabbie's thing, like the early episode.
Do you regret saying that on the podcast now or no?
Well, I'm not in trouble, so no.
At the end of the day, it's Creepshow looks bad, you know.
Yeah.
Repsion through 5 says, Edwin, you looking sexy tonight. Thank you, Repsion. I feel like I need to catch up with Repsion. I feel like something's different in his energy since like the past like month or so.
In a good way?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
On my last stream, he was talking about like all this. He must have been high as shit, but he was like saying some out there stuff. You remember Boblax? Anyone who puts mayo on hot dogs is going to hell or something.
Oh yeah! What the fuck?
And he was like saying like,
fuck him.
It would be cool to surf
mayo
on.
sucks, bro.
Okay, Nicholas DiOrio.
But to be fair, I don't like hot dogs.
All right, just like Edwin is apparently a fake Mexican, Tipster is a fake. I'm sorry, Nick is a fake bad guy. All right.
I don't like-
Big fat guy.
Yeah.
He's a fake
Nick,
fat guy.
He's a fake fat guy. It's a fat suit. He's actually skinny. He doesn't eat at all.
All right, you made it to the end. Now make sure you're subscribed with notifications so hopefully YouTube sends you one when I end up going live, because I don't typically schedule the live streams in advance. And if it's your first time in the show, join the chat and let me know. We'll have fun. Good night, guys.